If you're sleeping 7 or more hours and still waking up exhausted, your sleep probably isn't the problem. The issue is usually what's happening during the day. I see 6 common habits that prevent full recovery in many of my clients, and once we fix them, everything from brain fog to inflammation to energy levels all improves. You might assume that sleep begins once your head hits the pillow, but recovery actually starts much sooner with the signals you send your brain and body throughout the day. And that's the key distinction. Falling asleep is not the same as getting restorative sleep. Let's start with the first one because this one sets up the foundation for everything else. Sleep actually doesn't start at night. It starts roughly 12 to 16 hours earlier. You see, every single cell in your body operates on a natural circadian rhythm, and one of the major inputs for that rhythm is light. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see clients make. They focus on nighttime light. So they try to cut down blue light at night, they try and dim the lights and make sure that they're winding down, but they're missing the key input to start their day. Your eyes are the only part of your brain outside your skull. So when you wake up and you're exposed to bright light, such as daylight, it sends a message to cells in your brain that then impact that circadian rhythm in all the other cells. A simple way of thinking about this is when you're exposed to bright morning sunlight, it sets a timer for melatonin production roughly 12 to 16 hours later. So if you're getting bright sunlight even for 10 minutes at 7 a.m., by 9 p.m., your brain is going to start pumping out melatonin to help you sleep. But as much as getting morning light is important, blocking evening light is also critical. If you're under LEDs at 10 p.m. or you're scrolling your phone or watching TV, you are sending your brain a completely mixed signal, making it think that it's daytime. I call this the midnight sun effect, when your environment is telling your brain that it's still daytime long after the sun has actually gone down. So when it comes to light, there's a couple very simple rules you can follow. Try to get 10 minutes of bright morning sunlight as early as you can. Then 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed, dim the lights or change to warmer lighting, throw on blue light blocking glasses, and dim the screens. By the time you get in bed and you're ready for sleep, it should be completely dark. Even small amounts of light late at night or in your bedroom send tiny signals to your brain suggesting it's still daytime. This has a bigger cost than most people realize. The second mistake I see people making is they don't train their sleep during the day. One of the strongest inputs for deep recovery is physical activity. Not because exercise knocks you out, but because exercise builds up what I call sleep drive. This is your body's natural pressure to sleep later. And even 10 to 20 minutes of moderate activity like brisk walking during the day can improve your recovery at night. This one's somewhat counterintuitive because the harder you work during the day, the better your sleep quality tends to be, and the more sedentary you are during the day, the more restless you tend to be at night. Think about the days where you've been super busy and you've barely moved. How did you sleep? Usually not great, because your body actually needs the physical activity as a reason to recover. If you don't use up enough energy during the day, your body just doesn't get the demands that it needs for full restoration. And I want to be clear, this doesn't need to require a 90-minute gym session. Small amounts of movement, especially at higher intensity, is all the signal you need. The only caveat that I would add is you don't want to train too close to your bedtime because it can rev up your energy and then prevent you from getting into a deep sleep. Now, this next mistake is one that is extremely common among high achievers. But really quick, if you like this type of content and you want more science-backed strategies to improve your health, do yourself a favor and subscribe. Mistake number 3 is sabotaging sleep with food and alcohol. Now you might be thinking, this one's obvious, everyone talks about this, but there are a couple key nuances. Some people treat late night food or alcohol as a sleep aid. And I want to be clear, it may help you pass out, but it does not help you recover. When you go to sleep, you want the blood flow in your body to go to areas like your brain and your tissues to help clean out debris, toxins, and inflammation buildup so that you can recover fully. When you eat or drink alcohol too close to bedtime, you're sending your blood flow to your digestive system. That's why if you're out at a client dinner or end up having a late dinner or drink with your family, you might wake up thinking, man, I slept through the night, but I just don't feel recovered. It's because you're going to sleep, but it's not deep restorative sleep. Your goal here is very simple. try to give your body less to process at night. Admittedly, when family responsibilities and work demands are crazy, this one is really hard. But I tell all my clients, try to aim for at least 3 hours between your last meal or your last sip of alcohol and the time you go to sleep. That's usually enough, unless you've fallen for this fourth mistake where you do not respect sleep pressure. If you're already feeling exhausted during the day, you might be doing two things that feel good in the moment, but actually sabotage your sleep later. One is using stimulants like caffeine and nicotine, and the other is less common, but it's taking long naps. If you find yourself doing either of those things, I want to be clear, both of them interfere with what I call sleep drive. Feeling sleepy or tired is not a flaw. It is actually a biological signal. Your brain is building up this sleep drive throughout the day from a molecule called adenosine. Once enough adenosine has built up, your body falls asleep. Caffeine and nicotine can both block adenosine, so they temporarily make you feel awake by inhibiting that sleep drive. Now you might be thinking, I can still take caffeine or nicotine late in the day and fall asleep no problem. And that might be true, but sleep onset is only one metric. If you have caffeine or nicotine in your system from late in the day, you might still be able to fall asleep quickly, but you're gonna have worse sleep depth, you're gonna have less efficient recovery, and you're gonna have really fragmented sleep cycles. And in some people, it can even add more nighttime wake-ups to go to the bathroom, which is just another disruption. But longer naps, especially later in the day, they actually drain that sleep pressure that you need to fall asleep and get restorative sleep. So that's the trap. You might feel better at 4 p.m., but then you're wide awake at 11. You're basically borrowing energy that you're then paying back at night. So if you're tired all the time, don't automatically numb the signal. Take a minute to examine it. Is it not enough sleep from the night before? Is it not enough light? Did you get enough movement? Is it too much late night stimulation? The most important thing you can do, and this applies to anything with your health, is to pay attention to these feedback loops. Because if you're constantly masking a symptom like fatigue, you're going to miss very important signals for your long-term health. The fifth mistake that I see people making is not engineering their bedroom for sleep. Once you've managed your light input, the next layer is optimizing your environment. You probably optimize your office, your schedule, your workouts, but in the room where your recovery happens, for most people, it's an afterthought. Start with temperature. Your body needs to drop in temperature in order to fall asleep, so the optimal temperature to sleep within is somewhere between 65 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Then look at your bedding. Breathable fabrics matter. So cotton and other airflow-friendly fabrics tend to perform better and elicit deeper recovery than other synthetic fabrics. If you wake up hot, sweaty, or restless, this is not a minor detail that you want to overlook. Then there's noise. You need to silence notifications, turn on Do Not Disturb. Frankly, you should keep your phone and TVs out of your bedroom. This one catches most people off guard, but pay attention to your pets. You might not remember waking up when your dog shifts positions or your cat jumps on the bed, but chances are high that it is pulling you out of a deeper sleep. The real issue with lack of recovery and sleep disruption is that you don't need a full awakening for your recovery to suffer. So here is a really simple sleep setup protocol. Number 1, make sure your room is pitch black. Number 2, make sure your room is cool temperature. Number 3, use breathable bedding. Number 4, eliminate noise and notifications. And number 5, reduce anything else that might cause micro awakenings. This is very simple. There's nothing flashy here, but it is extremely effective. And this last mistake is probably the most important of all. A lot of folks that I work with turn bedtime into a performance test. In other words, they try forcing sleep. They lie there, they check the clock, they do breath work, they try harder, they get frustrated, and this frustration and anxiety becomes the reason they stay awake. This is what I call the bed stress loop. Your bed should mean one thing: sleep. So if you've been lying there for 15 or more minutes and you're not drifting off, get out of bed and reset. Sit somewhere with dim lighting, do something calming like stretching, and most importantly, no screens, no work, and no emotionally charged activities. Then go back only when you feel sleepy again. This works because your brain learns through associations. If you stay in bed every night, tossing and turning and checking your phone and checking the time, you start teaching your brain to associate being in bed with feeling stressed and anxious and disturbed. This is exactly what cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia tries to address. But you don't need CBT for this. You just need to stop forcing sleep. Most people think staying in bed gives them a better chance of falling asleep, but in many cases, it's actually the opposite. The more you stop chasing sleep, the easier the sleep happens. And if none of that works, there's another factor that I see happening a lot with people that are under high stress, and it is magnesium deficiency. So maybe you've already tried supplementing with magnesium, but there are a few different types that I'll recommend for different reasons. Magnesium glycinate is very helpful when you can't shut your mind off and need help falling asleep. Magnesium taurate is very helpful when you're feeling anxious and stressed throughout the day and wake up during the night. And magnesium malate is very helpful when you feel restless, so your muscles are twitching at night. Each of these forms of magnesium work in different ways, and they're pretty cheap as supplements, so you can get them individually or you can get them as a combined supplement. I included a link below to one that I recommend to a lot of my clients that has all three of those types I just mentioned. The bottom line is, if you're sleeping 7 or more hours and you're still waking up feeling like you haven't fully recovered, I'm actually going to tell you to take that as good news. It means you probably don't need more time in bed. You just need to optimize some of these signals during the day. These might seem like very small shifts, but I witness all the time with clients that when implemented together, it creates an entirely different night of sleep. And that's another part most people miss. Getting better sleep is rarely one dramatic fix. It's usually a handful of these inputs that when you shift them, put biology back on your side. If you do all of this and it is still challenging for you, I have another video where I go through some of the most effective sleep supplements and different reasons why you might want to take them, so you can check that out next. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful. I really appreciate you for being here, and I hope you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next video.